this foundation that will continue to build a brighter future for all of us.
When Capcom announced it would remake Resident Evil 2, the eventual results were astounding as the game racked up numerous Game of the Year awards. Based on this success, Capcom decided to capitalize on a remake of another popular title from the original trilogy with Resident Evil 3. The remake sticks with the storyline and the characters of the original as the focus of the title is on former STARS member Jill Valentine. Jill quickly crosses paths with the task force known as UBSC, who are there for assistance. In particular, Carlos Oliveira will assist Jill and returns as a playable character as you get deeper in the game. The goal for everyone is to escape the city alive. The story progression for the remake of Resident Evil 3 is packed nicely for a more cohesive experience. Whereas certain story points in the original game featured more involvement, some of the events feel more like cliff notes early on. The biggest difference in terms of game design between the Resident Evil 3 remake and the original is how Jill encounters Nemesis. While the remake of Resident Evil 3 may have reduced the puzzles, Capcom has replaced the puzzles with an emphasis on strategy. Not only is there a strategy to each individual enemy in the game, there's an even bigger strategy for each Nemesis encounter. If you try to just unload ammo on Nemesis, you're going to have a bad time. These encounters also tend to take away from the survival horror elements, as entering a fight with limited ammo isn't the worst thing in the world. There's usually ammo and health spread out throughout each boss fight. You will struggle and use trial and error to find the best strategy to finish each encounter. The other issue with this is once you figure out how to take Nemesis down, this makes playthroughs that much easier going forward since you'll know how to take him out. There is no doubt a bigger emphasis on action in the remake, but the survival horror element is still the prevalent design. Managing ammo and avoiding enemies is key to progressing through the game. This can certainly backfire as leaving an enemy in a location has the possibility of hampering you at a crucial time. The atmosphere in the city is excellent. It feels a bit more heightened rather than the doom and gloom feel of the original game. Jill features a dodge button, and this is certainly needed to conserve ammo at times. It is very difficult to get the timing down in the dodge, and it feels inconsistent across the board. This really isn't an issue or a defect, but there is a fairly steep learning curve for the timing on each individual enemy when it comes to dodging. It is even bigger when it comes to the Nemesis battles. The gameplay and story designs are specific to the remake, while all of it gives a nod to how the original conducted its business. Not only does the remake do a lot of referencing to the original game with Easter eggs and how it's designed, it feels like at different times it takes nods from the series as a whole. One thing that could be compared are the visuals between the two remakes. Capcom retains its RE engine, and the capabilities of this engine will shine in different ways in Resident Evil 3 as compared to Resident Evil 2. Personally, I don't believe there are any better looking player models in any video game to date. Jill Valentine may be the best render of a human being in any game ever. You're able to see dirt, burns, and blood on Jill, and her facial expressions really add life to the situation. Raccoon City really comes to life thanks to the RE engine. It feels like Capcom took a lot of cues from Devil May Cry 5, as billboards and neon lights in Raccoon City really stand out and they're extremely vibrant. Hallways are dark and dimly illuminated, and help to create that uneasiness that fans of the series will love. Zombies are ridiculously detailed, as each individual slash of a knife or a gunshot wound are accounted for and visible. Exploding heads are also gruesome and fun to watch. There aren't a ton of zombie models in the game, but all of them look excellent and they're detailed much like Resident Evil 2. Running Resident Evil 3 on a PS4 Pro did amount to a consistent 60 frames per second at a higher than 1080p resolution. Capcom did cut the corners where they could. For example, if there are enemies in the distance in Resident Evil 3, and this is mainly in the city, the models basically hiccup, and the animation runs at only a few frames per second. This doesn't affect gameplay, as everything within close proximity to the player is fine. The original Resident Evil 3 consisted of a very specific soundtrack that helped create the atmosphere for the game. The remake follows suit with its music, as Capcom took some of the more memorable songs of the original and remixed them for this game. The Resistance mode, the online multiplayer mode, is not an in-game option within Resident Evil 3, which is strange. You are provided a separate code to download this, but Capcom states that both the single player and multiplayer are one whole entity. This is a 4 versus 1 mode, which allows players to choose from one of 4 masterminds that will place down enemies and traps in the game, and take on 4 survivors as they solve puzzles and get keys to advance to the end of the map. Players have a choice of up to 6 survivors and can customize them as they level each individual one. Each survivor has a special skill they can use, and as of now, the 6 are just random people created for the mode. The visuals also take a hit, as the mode seems to be capped at 30 frames per second and only run at 1080p, even on a PS4 Pro. Collision detection seems off, and animations can be wonky. During my playthroughs, there were connection issues with the mastermind, and it took a while to start a quick match. There's a lobby system available, and you can play with friends, and the survivals do work cooperatively. This is a mode that certainly could be a standalone game, but thankfully it wasn't, and really didn't need to be included to begin with. On its own, the remake of Resident Evil 3 is another hallmark achievement for Capcom. It may not satisfy purists of the original, but if you are a fan of what the remake of Resident Evil 2 accomplished, there is no reason you won't enjoy this. It is hard to compare the two, but Resident Evil 3 does introduce a bit more action elements, much like the original version did, and it packages the game up nice for its 6 to 10 hour campaign for the first time through. The remakes suffer from what I call John Wick syndrome, as both are amazing in their own ways. You can't really choose a favorite. If you like this review, please hit like and subscribe, and head over to hardcoregamer.com for your fix and all your Resident Evil 3 needs. Also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter.